Hi, it's James from the Excire team, and in this video, I'm going to show you how you can get started with the Excire Search 2026 plugin so you can use Excire's AI-powered tools to rapidly organize, find, and cull images in Lightroom. Now, the Search 2026 plugin has some major upgrades compared to previous versions, so if you've upgraded to the new software as a longtime Excire user, you're in for a real treat. And if you're new to Excire, welcome. I think you're going to love what Excire Search 2026 has to offer. So let's fire up Lightroom Classic and get started. So here I am in the Lightroom Classic library module, and I've already installed Excire Search 2026. As you can see, if I go to Library, Plugin Extras, there are a variety of Excire search tools, including Search for People, Search for Faces, Search by Text Prompt, and so on. New in Excire Search 2026, though, is this handy quick access panel, which you can open by selecting this Open Excire Search Panel option here, and it's just going to pop right up, though my preferred way of opening this is actually just tapping Alt plus X on my keyboard, or Option plus X if you were on a Mac. Note that the panel can actually be configured in a couple of ways. I can have it in a photo preview mode, which is what we're looking at here, where I can see previews of my images and access some additional capabilities, or I can minimize this. So if I come down here to hide photos, turn it into just this little strip, which shows these icons on the side, which allows you to easily access various Excire tools. So here's the search by text prompt, there's the duplicate search, the keyword search, and so on. It's nearly all of the tools we saw in the Plugin Extras menu, just much simpler to access since we can just keep the small version of the panel in the corner, then click to run searches as needed. As an aside, most of Exire's tools are available in this panel, but not all of them. However, you can access any additional tools under the Plugin Extras menu or using the keyboard shortcuts. Now, before you can actually use any of Excire Search 2026's tools, you have to initialize your images. Initialization is when the Excire Search plugin actually analyzes your images and then automatically applies keywords and aesthetic scores. Without the initialization process, Exire's AI tools simply won't work. So it's essential that when you first install Excire Search, you initialize the existing images in your Lightroom catalog. And then you'll also want to initialize new images as they're imported into the catalog as well. Fortunately, you can set up Excire Search so it automatically initializes new images as they come into Lightroom, which I'll explain how to do later in this video. And by the way, I do want to emphasize you do not need to be concerned about privacy or data security here during the initialization process. Excire runs locally on your computer, which means that your files and your data don't actually get uploaded to the cloud. Instead, everything stays safe and sound on your own devices. Anyway, initialization is very quick and easy. So first, you want to make sure you're in the Lightroom Library module. Then you'll go to Library here, Plugin Extras, and you'll just go ahead and click on Initialize Photos. Now you'll see this initialization dialog box here, where you can choose which photos you want to initialize. If your whole Lightroom catalog hasn't been initialized yet, you'll want to select the whole catalog option. But if you just want to initialize a single folder or an image collection, just make sure it's selected in advance, and then you could just choose Film Strip here, as it tells Excire to only initialize the images in the strip along the bottom. Now, during initialization, Excire generates descriptive keywords for your files, and it also gives each file an aesthetic rating from 1 to 100. But you can choose whether these Excire keywords and aesthetic values are transferred into Lightroom. I like to see Exire's keywords and aesthetic scores, and when the keywords are added, they're not going to override any of my or your existing keywords. They're just going to appear in addition to the keywords that you've added manually. However, if you already have a carefully keyworded catalog and you don't want to add Exire's keywords into the mix, you can always uncheck this Transfer Keywords After Initialization option. And regardless of whether These boxes, so this one or the transfer aesthetic values after initialization box, regardless of whether they're checked or unchecked, you'll still be able to use Excire's keyword search and aesthetic search features. You just won't be able to see the keywords and aesthetic values in Lightroom Classic. And you can always choose to transfer these values into Lightroom later on if you like. So then you're just going to go ahead and click Start to initialize the images, hit OK, and then you just wait for the process to complete. Now, you might be wondering here, so how long does initialization actually take? And that depends on a few factors, including your computer hardware, but it's generally pretty fast. If you do have a huge number of photos, say 200,000, 300,000, a million, you can always initialize your photos in batches. Or you can let the program run overnight or even for a couple of days, and then when you come back, the initialization process will generally be complete. So, once initialization is done, you're going to see a dialog box like this one letting you know. I'll just click OK. And then you'll just be able to use Exire's tools to organize and search through your entire catalog of initialized photos. Now, I also want to show you a few other handy tips and tricks so you can set up Excire Search 2026 for the best results. If you select File, Plugin Manager, and then find Excire Search here, there are a number of really helpful options. So first, the new Excire Search Panel can be set to open automatically when you launch Lightroom Classic. You just have to check this box here, Open Excire Search Panel at Startup. That way, you don't actually have to open it manually. And second, as I mentioned earlier, the search panel does allow you to preview your images, and you can set the size of the previews right here. One of the cool features of the preview panel is that it indicates whether people's faces are in focus, and the larger the preview size, the more accurate these focus indicators will be. On the other hand, larger previews can slow down the process if you're trying to rapidly scroll through your photos using the photo preview window. So it's important to choose a preview size that works for your purposes. And for the fastest experience when moving between photos in the panel, you should really ensure that Lightroom has already generated high resolution previews before you use the panel. And you can adjust the Lightroom preview sizes under Edit, Catalog Settings, Previews in the Lightroom menu. But to keep things smooth, it's a good idea to ensure that the Lightroom standard preview size does match the Excire Search Panel preview size. Finally, I want to show you how you can automate the initialization process so that Excire initializes new images whenever you import them into Lightroom. Here in the Plugin Manager, just check this Initialize Photos During Import box. And if you want a delay between a Lightroom import and initialization, you can always add a waiting period here. And you can optionally check Transfer Aesthetic Values during import and transfer keywords during import if you want your aesthetic values and you want Exire's keywords to actually appear in Lightroom Classic. That way, every time you import new images, Excire takes care of all of this initialization stuff for you, and you don't have to worry about this workflow. You can instead focus on organizing your images and finding your images with Exire's powerful tools. Excire Search 2026 will save you so much time and effort, and with the new panel, it's easier to use than ever before. Just keep in mind the importance of initialization, because if your files aren't initialized, you won't actually be able to use Exire's tools. And when you get a chance, be sure to configure your Excire Search settings in the Plugin Manager. That way, you can have the best possible experience when working with the plugin. Thanks so much for watching, and if you found this video helpful, click that like button. Of course, for more tips and tutorials on Exire's AI-powered photo management tools, subscribe to our channel.